I watched through my living room window as a middle-aged woman with bleached blonde hair marched across my front lawn like she owned the place, heading straight for my garage where my brand new Polaris ATV sat parked. My coffee cup froze halfway to my lips as I recognized her immediately. Patricia Henderson, the HOA president of Meadowbrook Estates in Scottsdale, Arizona, had been a thorn in my side since the day I moved into this neighborhood 6 months ago. My name is Stephen Ashford, and I had bought this 3-bedroom ranch-style house thinking I was finally living the American dream. The community looked perfect online with its manicured lawns, palm trees lining the streets, and that classic Arizona desert landscape backdrop. What the real estate agent conveniently forgot to mention was that Patricia Henderson ran this HOA like a military dictator, and she had decided from day one that I was her personal project. The ATV incident started brewing 3 weeks earlier when I brought home my new toy. I had saved for months to buy that pearl-white Polaris Sportsman 850, top of the line with all the bells and whistles. Living in Arizona meant I was surrounded by amazing trails and desert terrain perfect for off-roading, and I was not about to let anyone tell me I could not park my own vehicle on my own property. The HOA rules stated nothing about ATVs specifically, just that all vehicles needed to be parked in garages or designated parking areas. My ATV sat right there in my garage, visible only when the door was open. Patricia did not see it that way. The first complaint arrived in my mailbox 4 days after I brought the ATV home. A formal letter on official HOA letterhead stated that recreational vehicles were not permitted to be visible from the street, and that I had 72 hours to remove it or face fines. I called her immediately, my frustration already building. "Patricia, this is Stephen Ashford from 2847 Cactus Drive. I just got your letter about my ATV." "Oh yes, Mr. Ashford, I'm glad you are taking this seriously. We have very strict rules about maintaining property values in Meadowbrook Estates." Her voice had that condescending tone that made my jaw clench. "The ATV is in my garage. It is not visible from the street unless my garage door is open, which is only when I am loading or unloading it. I saw it quite clearly yesterday afternoon. The garage door was open for at least 15 minutes. Because I was washing it, am I not allowed to use my own garage? The HOA bylaws clearly state that no recreational vehicles should be visible from common areas or streets." I pulled up the HOA documents on my laptop, scrolling through the endless pages of regulations. I am looking at Section 4, Paragraph 12 right now. It says vehicles must be parked in garages or designated parking spaces. It says nothing about recreational vehicles being banned entirely. Patricia made a clicking sound with her tongue that I had come to despise. "Mr. Ashford, I have been president of this HOA for 8 years. I know what the rules mean better than some newcomer who just moved here. The rules say what they say. My ATV stays. Then you will be receiving fines. $50 per day until the violation is corrected." I hung up on her. That was probably my first mistake, but the woman made my blood boil. Over the next 2 weeks, I received daily violation notices, each one adding another $50 to some imaginary tab Patricia was keeping. I consulted with a real estate attorney friend who looked over the HOA documents and confirmed what I already knew. Patricia was overstepping her authority, interpreting rules in whatever way suited her personal preferences. The situation escalated when I came home from work one Thursday to find a bright orange sticker plastered across my garage door declaring my property in violation of community standards. I peeled it off, balled it up, and threw it in the trash. My neighbor, an older guy named Frank who had lived in Meadowbrook for 20 years, wandered over while I was checking my mail. "You have really gotten under Patricia's skin," he said, shaking his head with a mixture of sympathy and amusement. "She is trying to find me for keeping my ATV in my own garage." Frank chuckled. "That sounds about right. She tried to find me once for having the wrong shade of beige on my mailbox post, claimed it was not on the approved color list. How did you deal with her?" I repainted the mailbox. "Easier than fighting." He patted my shoulder. "Good luck, kid. You are going to need it." I did not want to repaint any mailboxes or get rid of my ATV. I wanted to live my life without some power-hungry HOA president dictating my every move, so I did what any reasonable person would do. I filed a formal complaint with the HOA board, requesting a hearing to dispute the fines and clarify the rules. The board hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday evening at the community center, a small building near the neighborhood entrance that hosted everything from yoga classes to book clubs. I showed up 15 minutes early with printed copies of the HOA bylaws, highlighted and annotated. The board consisted of Patricia and 4 other residents who looked like they would rather be anywhere else. "Let us begin with the complaint filed by Mr. Stephen Ashford regarding recreational vehicle parking," Patricia announced, reading from a paper in front of her. "Mr. Ashford believes he should be exempt from our community standards." "That is not what I said." I kept my voice level. "I am asking for clarification on a rule that I believe is being misinterpreted." One of the board members, a woman named Susan who I recognized from the neighborhood pool, leaned forward. "Can you explain the issue, Mr. Ashford?" I distributed my copies of the bylaws. Section 4, Paragraph 12 states that all vehicles must be parked in garages or designated parking areas. My ATV is parked in my garage. Mrs. Henderson claims that recreational vehicles cannot be visible from the street at any time, but that is not what the rule states. Patricia cut in before anyone else could speak. "The spirit of the rule is clearly about maintaining our neighborhood's appearance. We do not want this community looking like a trailer park with recreational vehicles scattered everywhere." "My ATV is not scattered anywhere. It is in my garage." Another board member, a retired accountant named George, adjusted his glasses. "Patricia, do the bylaws specifically mention recreational vehicles?" "They mention maintaining property values and community standards, but specifically recreational vehicles," George pressed. Patricia's face flushed. "The board has always interpreted the rules to include any vehicle that might detract from our community's aesthetic appeal." I jumped on that. "So the board is interpreting rules based on subjective opinions rather than what is actually written." The hearing went back and forth for 40 minutes. 2 board members seemed sympathetic to my position, while the other 2 appeared to automatically defer to Patricia on everything. In the end, they voted to table the decision pending further review of the bylaws, which basically meant nothing would change immediately. I left frustrated but not defeated. That was 3 weeks ago. Since then, Patricia had ramped up her harassment campaign. She sent me violation notices for my trash, cans being visible from the street after 8 a.m. on non-collection days, even though I had brought them in by 7:30. She claimed my front lawn was a 1/4 inch taller than the permitted height, requiring me to mow more frequently. She even tried to cite me for parking my truck in my own driveway instead of the garage, claiming it violated the 2-vehicle limit for visible parking, conveniently ignoring that only 1 vehicle was visible at any time. Which brings me back to yesterday morning, watching through my window as Patricia marched toward my garage with the confidence of someone who believed rules did not apply to her. I set down my coffee and headed for the front door, stepping outside just as she reached my driveway. "Can I help you with something, Patricia?" She spun around, clearly not expecting me to be home. "Mr. Ashford, I am conducting a routine inspection of HOA violations. On my property, without my permission. As HOA president, I have the authority to inspect any property for compliance issues." I crossed my arms. "You do not have the authority to trespass on private property without permission or prior notice. That is not in any HOA bylaw. I am not trespassing. I am performing my duties. You are on my driveway without permission. That is the definition of trespassing." Patricia's face took on that pinched expression I had come to recognize as her about to say something particularly condescending. "Mr. Ashford, your attitude is exactly why this neighborhood has problems. When I moved here, everyone respected the HOA and followed the rules without complaint. Now we have people like you who think you can do whatever you want. I am following the rules. The actual written rules, not your personal interpretations. We will see about that." She turned and walked back toward the street, but not before shooting a long look at my garage where the ATV sat behind the closed door. I should have known that would not be the end of it. Patricia was not the type to back down, especially when she felt her authority was being challenged. I went about my day, working from home in my office that overlooked the backyard. Around 2 p.m., I took a break to make lunch and happened to glance out the front window again. My garage door was open. I knew for certain I had closed it after getting the mail earlier. And there was Patricia, standing in my garage taking photos of my ATV with her phone. I ran outside so fast I nearly tripped over my own feet. "What the hell are you doing?" Patricia did not even look startled. "Documenting violations. Get out of my garage right now. I am almost done. I am calling the police if you do not leave my property immediately." She finally lowered her phone, giving me that superior smile that made me want to scream. "There is no need for dramatics, Mr. Ashford. I am simply doing my job. Your job does not include breaking into my garage." I did not break anything. The door was unlocked. Because it is my garage on my property, you had no right to open it. Patricia walked past me toward the street. "You will be receiving a formal violation notice. That vehicle is not properly registered for street use and therefore cannot be stored in a garage intended for street-legal vehicles." "That is insane. You are making up rules now." She kept walking, climbing into her white Mercedes SUV parked at the curb. I stood there in my driveway, shaking with anger and disbelief. This woman had just openly trespassed on my property, entered my garage without permission, and acted like she had every right to do so. I did call the police. The non-emergency line, since it seemed ridiculous to call 911 over an HOA dispute. The dispatcher took my information and said an officer would come by to take a report. 2 hours later, Officer Martinez arrived, a young cop who looked fresh out of the academy. "You called about a trespassing incident." I explained the whole situation, probably giving him more background than necessary about the ongoing HOA dispute. Officer Martinez took notes and asked to see my garage. Did she take anything or damage anything? "No, she just took pictures of my ATV." "And you are certain she opened the garage door herself?" "She did not have your permission." "Absolutely certain. I closed it this morning and she opened it without asking." Officer Martinez nodded slowly. "Here is the thing, Mr. Ashford. Technically, yes, she trespassed on your property. But because there was no theft, no damage, and no threatening behavior, this would be a very minor charge. Most likely, we would document it, and if it happens again, you would have a pattern of behavior to support a restraining order. So she can just walk onto my property whenever she wants and there are no consequences." I did not say that. I am saying that for a first offense of simple trespassing where nothing was taken or damaged, we typically issue a warning. He saw my expression. But I will go talk to her and make it clear that she cannot do this again. Sometimes an official warning from law enforcement is enough to stop this kind of behavior. Officer Martinez left to visit Patricia's house, which was 4 streets over in the same neighborhood. He came back 20 minutes later and knocked on my door again. I spoke with Mrs. Henderson. She insists she has HOA authority to inspect properties. I explained that HOA authority does not override trespassing laws and that she needs your explicit permission to enter your property. She was not happy, but I made it clear that any future incidents would result in charges. Thanks, officer. Just document everything. Keep copies of all the letters, take photos if she comes onto your property again, maybe consider a security camera. If this escalates, you will want evidence. That night, I ordered 2 security cameras from Amazon, scheduled to arrive the next day. I also sent a formal email to the entire HOA board, copying Patricia, detailing the trespassing incident and demanding that she be removed as president for violating homeowner rights. I did not expect it to go anywhere, but I wanted everything documented. The next morning, I woke up to find my truck had a flat tire. At first, I thought it was just bad luck, but when I examined it closer, I found a clean slice in the sidewall. Someone had deliberately punctured it. I took photos and called the police again, though I had no proof Patricia was involved. The security cameras arrived that afternoon. I spent 2 hours installing them, one covering the front driveway and garage, the other covering the side yard where my trash cans lived. They connected to an app on my phone that would alert me to any motion and store footage in the cloud. Friday evening, I drove out to the desert with some friends to finally use my ATV on some trails we had been planning to hit for weeks. It felt good to get away from the neighborhood drama and just enjoy the machine I had worked so hard to buy. We spent the whole day riding through the desert landscape, stopping for lunch at a small town called Cave Creek, and generally having the kind of day that reminded me why I loved living in Arizona. I got home after dark, exhausted and covered in desert dust. The ATV was filthy too, so I pulled it into the garage and decided I would wash it tomorrow. I closed the garage door, showered, and fell into bed. Saturday morning changed everything. I woke up around 9 a.m., made coffee, and checked my phone. There were 6 motion alerts from my security camera. I opened the app, expecting to see a cat or maybe the mailman. Instead, I watched Patricia Henderson walk up my driveway at 8:17 a.m., look around to see if anyone was watching, and open my garage door. The timestamp showed she spent 4 minutes inside my garage. Then she came out, looked around again, and pulled her Mercedes SUV into my driveway. She opened the back of her SUV, and then the video showed something I could barely believe. Patricia went back into my garage, and moments later, I could see her struggling to push my ATV out of the garage. The ATV was heavy, easily 800 pounds, and she clearly had not thought through the logistics of moving it. But she was persistent, and the video showed her slowly pushing and pulling it toward her open SUV. Of course, there was no way the ATV was going to fit inside her Mercedes, but that did not stop her from trying to figure out angles and measurements. I was still watching the video, my jaw hanging open, when I heard an engine start outside. My engine. My ATV engine. I ran to the front window and saw Patricia sitting on my ATV in my driveway, clearly trying to figure out the controls. She must have found my keys in the garage. I kept them hanging on a hook near my workbench. I burst out the front door. "Get off my ATV right now." Patricia's head snapped up, and for the first time since I had met her, She actually looked scared. But that expression quickly morphed into defiance. This vehicle is being impounded for HOA violations. You cannot impound anything. Get off before I call the police. I am well within my rights as HOA president to remove items that violate community standards. I already had my phone out, dialing 911 this time because this had crossed way beyond a simple dispute. Patricia must have realized I was serious because she tried to figure out how to put the ATV in gear. She had never operated one before, and it showed. The engine revved, but the ATV lurched forward only a few feet before stalling. 911, what is your emergency? Someone is trying to steal my ATV from my driveway right now. Patricia climbed off the ATV, her face red. You are being ridiculous. I am not stealing anything. The 911 operator asked for my address and description of what was happening. I gave her all the details while keeping my eyes on Patricia, who seemed torn between running away and continuing to argue with me. Officers are on their way. Stay on the line with me. Patricia started walking toward her Mercedes. This is not over, Mr. Ashford. Do not leave. The police are coming. I have nothing to say to them. I was performing my duties as HOA president. You were committing grand theft auto. That stopped her. Do not be absurd. I was not stealing your ridiculous toy. You took my keys without permission, started my vehicle, and attempted to drive it off my property. That is theft. The sound of sirens grew closer. Patricia's expression shifted from defiant to worried. She glanced at her Mercedes, then at me, then at the approaching police cars. 2 Scottsdale PD cruisers pulled up, and I recognized Officer Martinez climbing out of one of them. Mr. Ashford, we have to stop meeting like this, he said, but his tone was serious. What happened? I explained while the other officer, a woman named Officer Chen, spoke with Patricia. I showed Officer Martinez the security camera footage on my phone, the whole sequence of Patricia entering my garage, attempting to move the ATV, and eventually starting it. Officer Martinez watched the entire video twice. Did you give her permission to enter your garage or take your vehicle? Absolutely not. And these are your keys. He pointed to the keys still dangling from the ATV ignition. Yes, I keep them in my garage. Officer Chen walked over with Patricia, who looked significantly less confident than she had 5 minutes ago. Mrs. Henderson claims she has HOA authority to remove the vehicle. Officer Martinez looked at Patricia. Madam, HOA authority does not extend to entering private property without permission or taking someone else's vehicle. You understand that, right? I was not taking it. I was impounding it. Do you have legal authority to impound vehicles? Patricia hesitated. I am the HOA president. That does not answer my question. Are you a law enforcement officer, or do you have a court order authorizing you to take this vehicle? No, but the HOA bylaws do not give you the right to take someone's property. Officer Martinez turned to Officer Chen. We have video evidence of her entering the garage without permission, taking keys and attempting to operate the vehicle. That is pretty clear-cut. Officer Chen nodded. Mrs. Henderson, I am placing you under arrest for attempted grand theft auto. Patricia's face went white. You cannot be serious. I am very serious. Turn around and place your hands behind your back. This is insane. I am a respected member of this community. I volunteer at the library. My husband is a prominent attorney. Madam, turn around now. I watched as Officer Chen handcuffed Patricia Henderson, reading her Miranda rights while Patricia sputtered protests and threats. Officer Martinez asked me to email him the security camera footage as evidence. This will likely go to the county attorney for prosecution, he explained. Given the value of the ATV and the clear intent shown in the video, They will probably charge her with attempted theft of means of transportation, which is a felony in Arizona. A felony. Vehicles are treated more seriously than other property theft. If convicted, she could face several years in prison, though more likely she will get probation for a first offense if she pleads guilty. Officer Chen loaded Patricia into the back of her cruiser while Officer Martinez finished taking my statement. Neighbors had started coming out of their houses, drawn by the police presence. Frank from next door gave me a thumbs up. As the police cars drove away with Patricia in the back of one, I stood in my driveway trying to process what had just happened. My HOA president had just been arrested for trying to steal my ATV. It felt surreal. My phone rang an hour later. Unknown number, but I answered anyway. Mr. Ashford. This is David Henderson, Patricia's husband. I had never met him, though I knew he practiced law somewhere in Phoenix. Hello. I need you to drop the charges against my wife. I did not press charges. She committed a crime and the police arrested her. This is a misunderstanding blown out of proportion. Patricia takes her HOA duties very seriously. Sometimes she can be overzealous, but she would never steal anything. Mr. Henderson, I have video of her taking my keys and trying to drive my ATV away. That is not overzealous. That is theft. She was trying to resolve an HOA dispute. By stealing my property, his voice took on an edge. If you pursue this, I will make your life in this neighborhood a living hell. I have connections throughout the legal community and the city. Your HOA violations will be the least of your problems. Is that a threat? It is a promise. Drop this now and we can all move on. I hung up on him. 5 minutes later, I called Officer Martinez and reported the threatening phone call. He advised me to document it and not engage with David Henderson further. The story spread through Meadowbrook Estates like wildfire. By Sunday afternoon, I had 3 different neighbors stop by to ask if it was true that Patricia had been arrested for trying to steal my ATV. Frank brought over a 6-pack of beer and we sat on my front porch while he filled me in on Patricia's history in the neighborhood. She has been president for 8 years, but only because no one else wants the job, Frank explained. Most people just keep their heads down and do whatever she says because it is easier than fighting. But she has gotten worse over the years, more controlling, more aggressive about enforcing rules that she makes up on the spot. Why did not anyone stop her? Who was going to stop her? Her husband is a lawyer. Most people were scared of getting sued or harassed. You are the first person to really stand up to her, and look what happened. Monday morning, I received an email from Susan, one of the HOA board members who had seemed sympathetic during my hearing. She informed me that an emergency board meeting had been called to discuss Patricia's arrest and her position as president. I was invited to attend. The meeting was Tuesday evening, same community center. This time, the room was packed with residents, everyone wanting to know what was happening. Susan called the meeting to order, looking uncomfortable in Patricia's usual seat at the head of the table. We are here to discuss the arrest of our HOA president, Patricia Henderson, and what actions the board should take. As many of you know, Mrs. Henderson was arrested Saturday morning for attempted theft. Murmurs ran through the crowd. George, the retired accountant, raised his hand. Has anyone verified this actually happened? I stood up. I can verify it. It was my ATV she tried to take, and I have security camera footage of the entire incident. Can we see it? Someone called from the back. I had anticipated this and brought my laptop. I connected it to the community center projector and played the security footage. The room went silent as everyone watched Patricia enter my garage, take the keys and attempt to move the ATV. There were audible gasps when the video showed her sitting on it, trying to start the engine. When the video ended, The room erupted in conversation. Susan banged a gavel to restore order. Given this evidence and the seriousness of the charges, I motion that Patricia Henderson be removed as HOA president effective immediately. Seconded, George said quickly. The vote was unanimous. 4 board members, all voting to remove Patricia. Susan then motioned to elect a temporary president until a proper election could be held. George was nominated and accepted. Now, regarding Mr. Ashford's dispute about his ATV, George said, shuffling through papers. I have reviewed the bylaws extensively. Mr. Ashford is correct. There is no specific prohibition against recreational vehicles stored in garages. The previous interpretations were overreaching. Mr. Ashford, all fines previously assessed against you are hereby voided. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Thank you. An older woman raised her hand. What about all the other ridiculous fines Patricia has given out over the years? I was fined $200 for having a pink flamingo lawn ornament that my granddaughter gave me. George nodded. We will be reviewing all violations issued in the past 2 years. If anyone believes they were unfairly fined, please submit a written complaint to the board for review. The meeting continued for another hour, with resident after resident sharing stories of Patricia's overreach and abuse of power. It became clear that I was far from the only person she had harassed, just the first one to push back hard enough to expose her behavior. Wednesday morning, I got a call from the county attorney's office. A prosecutor named Michelle Reynolds wanted to discuss my case. Mr. Ashford, I have reviewed the police report and the video evidence. We are moving forward with charging Mrs. Henderson with attempted theft of means of transportation, a Class 5 felony. Her husband called and threatened me if I did not drop the charges. We are aware. Mr. Henderson has been warned that witness intimidation is a serious crime. Has he contacted you again? No, that was the only call. Good. I want you to know that this case is strong. The video evidence is clear and damning. Mrs. Henderson's attorney has already reached out about a plea deal. What kind of plea deal? They want to plead down to a misdemeanor with probation. We are not inclined to offer that. The crime is too serious and the evidence too clear. We are offering a plea to the felony charge with a recommendation of probation and community service, but she would have to plead guilty to the felony. What happens if she does not take the plea? Then we go to trial, and based on this evidence, I am confident we would win. She would face up to 2.5 years in prison, though likely she would get probation as a first-time offender, but having a felony conviction would significantly impact her life. Thursday afternoon, Frank knocked on my door looking worried. Have you heard about Patricia's kids? What about them? Apparently Child Protective Services got involved. Someone reported that Patricia had been arrested and there were concerns about the kids. I had not even thought about Patricia's children. I had seen them around the neighborhood occasionally. 2 kids may be 10 and 13 years old, but never really interacted with them. What happened? From what I heard, David Henderson got investigated because of Patricia's arrest. Turns out he has a history too. Nothing criminal, but enough red flags that CPS opened a case. Something about past domestic disputes and concerns about the home environment. That seems extreme for one arrest. Frank shrugged. I am just telling you what I heard. Julie down the street works for CPS, and she mentioned it at the pool yesterday. She could not give details, but she said the Henderson case was getting a lot of attention internally. Friday morning, Patricia's attorney filed a motion to dismiss the charges, arguing that there was no intent to permanently deprive me of my property and therefore no theft occurred. The prosecutor called to let me know. This is a common defense tactic, Michelle Reynolds explained. They are arguing that because she is the HOA president and claimed to be impounding the vehicle, she did not have criminal intent. It is not going to work. The video shows she took your keys without permission and tried to operate your vehicle. That is enough for the charges to stand. The hearing on the motion to dismiss was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Michelle asked if I could attend in case the judge had questions. I agreed, taking the day off work. The Maricopa County Superior Court building in downtown Phoenix was intimidating, all marble and security checkpoints. I met Michelle Reynolds in the lobby, a sharp woman in her 40s with graying hair and intense eyes. Patricia Henderson's attorney is going to argue that this is a civil matter, not criminal, she briefed me. He will claim HOA disputes should be handled through civil courts. Our position is that regardless of the underlying dispute, taking someone's property without permission is criminal theft. The HOA dispute is irrelevant to the criminal charges. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Judge William Kozlowski presided, an older man with white hair who looked like he had seen every possible case come through his courtroom. Patricia sat at the defense table with her attorney, Richard Brennan, a slick-looking guy in an expensive suit. She would not look at me. Brennan stood to argue the motion. Your Honor, this case represents a gross overreach of criminal prosecution. Mrs. Henderson is a dedicated community volunteer who has served as HOA president for 8 years without incident. The alleged theft was actually an attempt to enforce HOA regulations regarding prohibited vehicles. There was no intent to permanently deprive Mr. Ashford of his property, which is a required element of theft. Judge Kozlowski looked unimpressed. Counselor, are you arguing that HOA presidents have the legal authority to take residents' property to enforce regulations? I am arguing that the context matters, Your Honor. This was not a criminal act. It was a civil dispute that escalated unfortunately. Did Mrs. Henderson have Mr. Ashford's permission to enter his garage? The HOA bylaws give the president authority to inspect properties. That was not my question. Did she have his explicit permission on that specific day to enter his garage and take his keys? Brennan hesitated. No, Your Honor, but then she trespassed and took property that did not belong to her without permission. Sounds criminal to me. The judge turned to Michelle Reynolds. Miss Reynolds, what is the state's position? Michelle stood. Your Honor, the state's position is straightforward. The defendant entered Mr. Ashford's garage without permission, took his keys without permission, and attempted to operate his vehicle without permission. The video evidence, which the court has reviewed, clearly shows this sequence of events. The defendant's claimed authority as HOA president is irrelevant. HOA authority does not supersede criminal law. No HOA bylaw can authorize theft. Judge Kozlowski nodded. I have reviewed the video evidence submitted by the state. The motion to dismiss is denied. The charges stand. We will proceed to trial unless the parties reach a plea agreement. Patricia's face crumpled. Her attorney put a hand on her shoulder, whispering something I could not hear. The judge set a trial date for 6 weeks out and dismissed us. As I left the courtroom, David Henderson approached me in the hallway. He looked haggard, nothing like the confident attorney I imagined from our phone call. Mr. Ashford, please. Can we talk? Michelle put herself between us. Mr. Henderson, you should not be speaking to the victim. I just want to explain. This has destroyed my family. My wife is facing felony charges. CPS has opened an investigation into our home. My law firm put me on administrative leave because of the publicity. Please, is there anything we can do to make this right? I looked at him, this man whose wife had made my life miserable for months and then tried to steal my property. Your wife brought this on herself. I did not ask for any of this. I just wanted to live in my house and park my ATV in my garage without being harassed. I know. Patricia has problems. Control issues. Her therapist says she has anxiety that manifests as trying to control her environment. She needs help, not prison. Then she should take the plea deal and get help. A felony conviction would destroy her. She would lose her job, her reputation, everything. Michelle stepped in. Mr. Henderson, this conversation needs to end now. Your wife committed a serious crime. If she wants to avoid trial, she needs to accept responsibility and take the plea offer on the table. We walked away, leaving David Henderson standing in the courthouse hallway looking defeated. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. 2 weeks later, I received a call from Michelle. Patricia Henderson accepted the plea deal. What are the terms? She pleads guilty to attempted theft of means of transportation, a Class 5 felony. Sentencing will be in 4 weeks. We are recommending 3 years probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, and full restitution for any costs you incurred. What about jail time? None, assuming she complies with all the terms of probation. If she violates probation, she could face up to 2.5 years in prison. The plea hearing was brief. Patricia stood before Judge Kozlowski and admitted, in a quiet voice, that she had entered my garage without permission and attempted to take my ATV. The judge accepted the plea and scheduled sentencing. The CPS investigation continued separately. Frank kept me updated through the neighborhood gossip network, which had become incredibly efficient. Apparently, the investigation uncovered concerning patterns in the Henderson household. Multiple domestic dispute calls to their address over the years, reports from the kids' school about behavioral issues, and financial problems that Patricia had been hiding by controlling every aspect of the family's life. The sentencing hearing 4 weeks later was more emotional. Patricia's attorney presented letters from friends and colleagues attesting to her character. Her therapist testified about her anxiety disorder and the treatment plan they had developed. Patricia herself gave a tearful statement apologizing to me and the court. I let my need for control spiral out of control, she said, her voice breaking. I convinced myself I was protecting the neighborhood, maintaining standards, but really I was just trying to feel powerful because I felt so powerless in other areas of my life. I am truly sorry for what I did to Mr. Ashford and to other residents I mistreated. Judge Kozlowski listened to everything, then delivered his sentence. Mrs. Henderson, your actions were serious. You violated someone's property rights, attempted to steal an expensive vehicle, and abused your position of minor authority in a way that caused harm to multiple people. However, I believe you are genuinely remorseful and that you need treatment more than incarceration. He sentenced her to 3 years probation, 300 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, and a $5,000 fine. Additionally, he ordered her to have no contact with me and prohibited her from holding any HOA position for 10 years. If you violate any term of this probation, Mrs. Henderson, you will serve the maximum prison time. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. As for the CPS investigation, Frank told me the outcome a week after sentencing. The kids are staying with David's parents for now. CPS determined that Patricia's arrest and the family stress created an unsafe environment. David is working with them on a reunification plan, but it is going to take time. So she lost custody, temporarily. She can have supervised visits, but the kids are not living at home right now. From what I hear, David is devastated. He had no idea how bad Patricia's control issues had gotten until all this came out. The neighborhood slowly returned to normal. George turned out to be a reasonable HOA president, focused on actual community needs rather than petty rule enforcement. He formed committees to review and revise the bylaws, removing vague language that had allowed for arbitrary interpretations. The community was actually starting to feel like a community rather than a prison camp. I kept my ATV in my garage, using it every weekend to explore the Arizona desert trails I had moved here to enjoy. Sometimes neighbors would ask about the incident as it became known, and I would give them the short version. Most people were just relieved that Patricia was gone and life could continue without constant violation notices and harassment. 3 months after sentencing, I ran into David Henderson at a grocery store in Scottsdale. We both froze, me holding a basket of produce and him pushing a cart with 2 kids who I recognized as his children. "Mr. Ashford," he said quietly, "Mr. Henderson." An awkward silence stretched between us. Finally, he spoke. "I want you to know that I understand why you did what you did." Patricia needed help, and maybe this was the only way she was going to get it. She is in intensive therapy now. We are separated. I am trying to rebuild trust with my kids. I am sorry it came to this. I am not. I am sorry for how it happened, but Patricia was spiraling and I did not see it, or I did not want to see it. She needed to hit rock bottom. This was her rock bottom. He glanced at his kids who were looking at video games on their phones. "We are working on getting them home. CPS says we are making good progress. I hope it works out for you and your kids. Thank you." He started to push his cart away, then stopped. "For what it is worth, you had every right to stand up for yourself. Patricia was wrong, and what she did was inexcusable. I am glad you did not let her get away with it." I watched them walk away, this broken family trying to piece itself back together. Part of me felt guilty for my role in their crisis, but a larger part knew that I had simply defended myself against someone who abused her power and violated my rights. The consequences were Patricia's own doing, not mine. 6 months after the arrest, I attended an HOA meeting where George announced his decision to step down as president due to health issues. The board held elections, and a woman named Lauren, who lived 2 streets over and worked as a paralegal, was elected. Her first act was to formally apologize on behalf of the HOA to everyone Patricia had mistreated and to waive all outstanding fines from the previous administration. "We want Meadowbrook Estates to be a place where people enjoy living," Lauren announced, "not a place where they feel persecuted. We are going to focus on the things that actually matter, like maintaining common areas, organizing community events, and helping neighbors connect with each other." It was the HOA I had imagined when I first moved in. People actually smiled when they saw each other now. Neighbors chatted at the mailbox instead of hurrying away. Kids played in the streets without parents worrying about HOA complaints for sidewalk chalk drawings. One evening, about 8 months after the whole ordeal, I was washing my ATV in my driveway when Frank wandered over with 2 beers. He handed me one and we stood there, watching the sun set over the desert landscape that made Arizona home. "You know what the funny thing is?" Frank said. "Everyone in this neighborhood wanted Patricia gone, but you are the only one who had the guts to actually stand up to her." "I just wanted to keep my ATV." "You did more than that. You freed this whole neighborhood from a tyrant. We should put up a statue of you at the community center." I laughed. "Please do not. I just want to live my life in peace." "Mission accomplished." Frank clinked his beer against mine. "To peaceful living and ATVs in garages. To standing up for yourself even when it is hard." We drank our beers and watched the Arizona sunset paint the sky orange and purple. My ATV sat sparkling clean in my driveway, no longer a source of stress or conflict. Just a vehicle I enjoyed riding through the desert I called home. The last I heard about Patricia was from a Christmas card Lauren sent to all HOA members, updating everyone on neighborhood news. There was a brief mention that Patricia Henderson had completed her community service and was continuing her counseling. The kids had returned home to live with David, with Patricia having regular visitation rights. She had started working at a nonprofit helping domestic violence victims, apparently finding purpose in actually helping people rather than controlling them. I never saw her again. She moved out of Meadowbrook Estates shortly after the holidays, and David sold their house in the spring. A nice young couple with a baby moved in, and they kept to themselves mostly, which was fine by everyone. As for me, life continued. I kept riding my ATV every weekend, joined the HOA social committee to help organize neighborhood barbecues, and even made some good friends in the community. The whole experience taught me that standing up for yourself is not just about winning a specific fight. It is about refusing to let anyone make you feel small or powerless in your own home. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how everything went down, if I wish I had just moved the ATV or found a compromise with Patricia. My answer is always the same. I did not start the fight, but I finished it. Patricia had the chance to back down at multiple points. She could have admitted the rules did not prohibit my ATV. She could have stopped with the harassment and petty violations. She definitely should not have trespassed on my property and tried to steal my vehicle. Every choice she made was her own, and every consequence that followed was earned. I defended my rights, my property, and ultimately I helped free an entire neighborhood from someone who abused her tiny amount of power to make everyone's lives miserable. If that makes me the villain in Patricia's story, I can live with that. In my story, I am just a guy who wanted to keep his ATV in his garage and was willing to stand up for that right. The security cameras I installed that day are still running, capturing every moment of my peaceful driveway. I review the footage sometimes, just to remind myself of how far things have come. Where I once watched Patricia trespass and attempt theft, I now see neighbors waving hello, kids riding bikes, and the occasional delivery driver dropping off packages. My garage holds my ATV, my truck, and all the tools and equipment I need for my hobbies. No one sends me violation notices. No one trespasses on my property. No one questions my right to own and store whatever legal property I choose to own and store. That is all I ever wanted. Just to live in my house, in my neighborhood, in peace. And now I do.